What's up, Mets fans? Welcome here for some breaking news as the Mets do make a trade and David Stearns finally trades a prospect we're talking about as the Mets finally get Luis Robert Jr. after a couple of years of trying to get him or being interested in him. They finally land him and they get the deal done with the White Sox. And with this breaking news, I don't think the Mets are out on Bellinger. And the reason why, I'll get into that in a little bit, is because if you watch Mets Hot Stove yesterday with me and Chris, I specifically said why Bellinger is still part of the New York Mets plan is because I think Bellinger would play first base. That's the big reason why I think Bellinger is still going to be a possibility for the New York Mets. And the good news is that you relieve some of the burden or the excess of infielders that you have on this roster. Not only do you get a center fielder in Luis Robert Jr., who is great defensively, you're still going to understand what is forming or what is coming together on the David Stearns plan, so to speak. I love this deal. And I said this for a while. Acuna is not the player that everybody thought he was going to be. I don't care how many home runs he hits in the Venezuelan Winter League. I just don't care. All right. He was a okay bench player who was a glorified base runner and defensive replacement. And if you really look at the defense, with Bo Bichette at third, Lindor at short, Simeon at second, there was nowhere for Luis Acuna to play. Yeah, he could come in for speed. You can find speed. You have enough speed in your farm system. And for everybody who loves Jet Williams, well, there's a pretty good chance Jet Williams is probably going to be on this in this organization, considering that they just traded Luis Acuna. So the official trade is obviously the Mets get Luis Robert Jr. They traded Luis Acuna and minor leaguer Truman Pauly. So it's not at all a deal breaker, right? This isn't somebody that has had a great bat. 100% agree with that. But signing Bo Bichette, and I do think the Mets are still in on Bellinger, this is really nothing to give up, right? Everybody who was complaining about, Mauricio and Beatty and Vientos and Williams, well, there's a pretty good chance that Luis Acuna was expendable. And he did. If you're not paying at what David Stearns has done, he did it last year with Drew Gilbert. Now, with Drew Gilbert, it was a reliever. All right, I still wasn't crying a river for Drew Gilbert. But the same thing happened to Drew Gilbert that has happened within 6 months of for Luis Acuna. And what you have to see here is the fact that with Drew Gilbert, Ryan Clifford and Jet Williams passed him on the depth charts. That was a fact. So Drew Gilbert became expendable. What happened this year? Jet Williams, and when it comes to Mauricio, Vientos, Beatty, they all passed him on the depth chart. And he became expendable. And again, I don't like having a top prospect being a glorified base runner and defensive replacement. That is a waste of a prospect. You might as well use him as an asset. If you didn't have much use for him, and the only way he can probably get better, if he gets better at all, is to play every day. He was not going to do that after the trade for Marcus Simeon and the signing of Bo Bichette. It just wasn't going to happen. Even though Bo Bichette might be here 1 year, you still got Brett Beatty. I don't think Brett Beatty's going anywhere. Unless he's in a trade for a top pitcher. And the only way I can see him going anywhere is if Sandy Alcantara is a New York Met. Because we know the Mets, the Marlins want Brett Beatty. That is it. So, once again, guys, if you're just tuning in, the Mets trade for Luis Robert Jr., Luis Acuna is going to the White Sox along with minor leaguer Truman Pauly. Guys, I said that, and you guys are just tuning in. I don't believe this takes us out on Bellinger. If you were watching the Mets Hot Stove yesterday with myself and Chris, I specifically said that the Mets are going to sign Cody Bellinger, and I fully believe truly believe that he's going to play first base. Don't think for a second Jorge Polanco is going to be the everyday first baseman. It makes no sense. Just because David Stern said that once we got him was because the roster wasn't put together yet. And I still think they're in on him. This has nothing to do with, I think this was in the works for a while. We heard this trade rumors in the beginning of the offseason. We heard this last trade deadline. We heard this last offseason. This was always a deal that we heard of. We heard about Luis Robert Jr. for Luis Angel Acuna. We heard that. Like, that is, Dolo, where is Polanco going to play? He's going to be your everyday DH. This is why I think there's more of a trade coming, or another trade coming shortly for a pitcher. I do think you're going to see either Mauricio or Vientos or possibly Beatty still off this team. I still think there's going to be a possibility of a Peralta trade. You're hearing rumblings about Tariq Skubal possibly being rumored about being traded again. And that is something that I do believe is going to go down. You can't have this many infielders, guys. I said this for a while. You can't keep on having all these guys here, either, taking up spots in the farm system in the minors, just sitting there, who probably could be ready, but you don't have a spot for them. It doesn't make roster sense. I said this for a while. Why is Luis Angel Acuna sitting on the bench? It makes no sense. Same thing goes for Mauricio. Same thing goes for Vientos. Right now, Vientos is still your DH, right? With Jorge Polanco at first base, maybe platooning with Vientos. All right, that's a strong possibility. But there's still too many infielders. That's why I still believe that they're going to go after one of these pitchers, and I think it's going to involve some of these prospect infielders because it only makes sense. And this only confirms it, right? As stubborn as David Stearns is with these prospects, with the signing of Bo Bichette, showing a pulse that he's actually willing to do it, and now trading a top prospect for a guy who's had down seasons, 100%. But as I said many times, and if you follow this channel, I said this many times, Luis Robert Jr., I think, needs a change of scenery. Now, I'm not saying he's going to hit 40 home runs. I'm not even going to say he's hitting 30 home runs. But look what he had with the White Sox. Look who was on that team over the last couple of seasons. The White Sox have been a disaster for the last 2.5 seasons. His last best season was 2023. If you look at the roster in 2023 with the White Sox and look at 24, 25, tremendous difference. I think he needs to change the scenery. I know he's a great defender. That is not something that you have to change. But guess what? Putting him with Juan Soto and Francisco Lindor in the lineup. Shit, Marcus Semien, Bo Bichette. It's a lot different. And you know what? I do think that he just needed to change the scenery. I think he needed grown-ups in the room. He had a bunch of managers that were a bunch of idiots in that organization. And it looked like the inmates ran the asylum. Now, I am not telling you that he's going to work out, but it's basically a 1-year deal. Now, the full trade doesn't involve any money. So the Mets are taking on that money, the $20 plus million of this 1-year salary. And again, don't get mad at the money. It's a 1-year deal, just like Bo Bichette's a 1-year deal. And I'm pretty sure the Cody Bellinger, if they do land him, is going to be technically a 1-year deal. The same thing with Bo Bichette. So the money isn't a problem because it's only a 1-year deal. Gio, I'm not being optimistic about Luis Robert Jr., but who is better, right? Cody Bellinger, I still believe, is going to be a New York Met. And I still didn't believe that Cody Bellinger was playing center field. I said that for a while. I don't think the projection of where Cody Bellinger would play on this team was center field. I didn't believe that at all. And what this also does with Luis Robert Jr., let's say the Mets do get Cody Bellinger. I still think they're going to put Cody Bellinger at first base if they get there. Mark Green, Acuna is going to make your words about him look stupid. Well, you know what? The Mets believed me as well. The Mets believed the same thing I believed. They made trades, and just because you might not agree with the Simeon trade or signing Bo Bichette, they allowed this infield to have no room for these guys. So blame David Stearns, not me. But I said this for a while. Luis Acuna, I don't care how many home runs he hits in the Venezuelan league. All right? The kid can't hit. All right? The biggest problem with a guy like Acuna, and you saw it when he had opportunities with the Mets, was he tries to hit home runs. He is not going to be a big home run guy. He might be a 15 home run guy max. With his tremendous amount of speed, he needs two things to happen to use his speed in the best way possible. He needed his average to go way up and his on base to go way up, and three things, and lower his strikeouts. He has not done any of that. And maybe he will. I'm not saying he can't be. But you know what? Now he goes to a depleted White Sox team in the middle of nowhere in Chicago on the south side, and maybe he will develop. Maybe he will. But he ain't going to help the White Sox win. He has a lot of development to do. And if the Mets have told you anything this offseason, and this is coming from a guy who has not gave David Stearns credit, and now I am giving him credit because he's finally making moves and willing to trade prospects. And there's more prospects to be traded, just so everybody, all you prospect huggers, are going to understand that very quickly. Like, Acuna had nowhere to play. He's been passed up on the depth chart by way too many guys to keep him on this team. That's why when you have an abundance of infielders, you can use them as assets, and David Stearns finally did. He did it last year with Drew Gilbert when Ryan Clifford and Jet Williams passed him on the depth chart. And now other guys pass Acuna on the depth chart. That's it. The reason why I don't think that deal happened at the trade deadline was because I think the Mets like Vientos. I think they still believe in his bat. Again, I'm not sure about it, but honestly, if it was between Acuna and Vientos, I'd rather trade Acuna because at least Vientos could have a role on this team. Acuna didn't. I'm sorry. I'd rather have Vientos and Mauricio on the bench, who, oh, by the way, has tremendous speed as well. If Mauricio is the type of guy they believe can fill that Luis Acuna role, which he plays the same positions, he has tremendous speed, and he can be a very good defender. So there is more roles for for Mauricio and Vientos than there was Luis Acuna. Luis Acuna isn't a DH. Luis Acuna is a defensive replacement and has tremendous speed, a pinch runner late in games. Mauricio can do that. He can play all three positions just like Luis Acuna. So that is why Dolo, exactly. But you know what? The Mets didn't budge. Here's what I know. I felt like the Mets, or this is just my opinion, I felt like the Mets actually knew that there was barely any market for Luis Robert Jr. And the best offer the White Sox were ever going to get is what the Mets were offering. I truly believe the Mets always had Acuna on the table for Luis Robert Jr. But the White Sox asked for Vientos time and time again, and I think that's why that deal never happened. Maybe they enticed him with another minor leaguer in Truman Pauly. I don't know. It might not mean nothing to us, but a team like the White Sox, who was in complete rebuild mode, Truman Pauly might mean something to them. I don't know. But the Mets were never going to trade Vientos. I mean, they still might trade Vientos. If it's for the right deal, put it this way. I don't think anybody's off the table for a top-line starting pitcher. If it's the right move, if the Tigers say, hey, we're willing to trade Terry Schoolblay and Vientos is in that deal, I don't think it matters at that point. But right now, it seems like they love Vientos. And that's okay. Again, I don't agree with it, but I can see I can see the argument of why they like Vientos. They feel like that bat can still play. And absolutely could. I'm not against that. But if I had to choose between Vientos or Acuna being off this team in a trade, it's Acuna because there was really no role for him. Mauricio can take Acuna's spot on the bench tomorrow. He does the exact same thing. And he has more power. I think everybody believes that he is going to be a better all-around player than Acuna, even though Acuna seemed like everybody was highly regarded him. And I'm sorry, he's been here 2 years. He had the opportunity, which everybody forgets. He had the opportunity to win the second base job. He lost it. Just like Vientos lost third base, Acuna lost second base. Remember, Brett Beatty went nuts last spring? And what happened? Mendoza says, I'm going to play Acuna, who didn't have a good spring training, who lost the second base job to Brett Beatty, and play him on opening day because Framber Valdez is a lefty and he played Acuna. I thought that was a problem from the start. Then, when Beatty sucked and got sent down and McNeil was still going through his injury issues, Luisano Acuna had the second base job. Make no mistake about it, everybody. He lost that job. He had every opportunity to take that job. He struck out too much. His on-base was terrible. And his average was garbage. He didn't even hit above 220. It was bad. It was bad. So, if I had to choose between Mauricio and Acuna being on the bench, I'd rather have the better bat in Mauricio and the potential power coming off the bench. And that is what you have to look at. You have to look at who do you want on the bench, Acuna or Mauricio. Mauricio is fast. He can play defense, and he can be used off the bench for a potential power bat. That is what you're looking for. You're not bringing up somebody late in the game for a pinch hitter that has a 210 average. Makes no sense. Now, Mauricio has a ton of speed, just like Acuna. Now, Acuna is probably a little bit faster, but Mauricio is not no slob. He can run. So, look at it this way for everybody who's going crazy over Luisano Acuna. And I know there's Luisano Acuna fans here. But Mauricio fits that bill more because of what he can do with the bat. And Dolo, great. That's an excellent point. Luis Robert Jr. is playing for a contract after this year. Why would you not want to take a chance on a player that has the potential? And this is David Stern's motto, right? Get guys that have not been good in a couple of years, right? This is what everybody apparently loves about David Stearns, right? Everybody loves this about David Stearns. Oh, he brings in guys that haven't been good for basically nothing. And let's be honest, the money doesn't mean nothing to the Mets, clearly. $20 million for a guy who hasn't been good in 2 years, they don't care about that, but they see the potential. That's what David Stearns has been doing since being the president of baseball ops for the New York Mets. Taking a guy that has not been good, and it's like a low risk, high reward. And if he performs well, great. The Mets ain't going to sign him after this year. I mean, he's only 27 years old. Maybe the Mets will. But here's what it does. I still think the Mets are going to go get Cody Bellinger. Again, I think Cody Bellinger would play first base. I said that for a while. And the short-term deal, high annual value, I think is still a possibility for the Mets because I think you could put Bellinger in first base and Carson Benz can ease in to left field and get that experience that he needs. I think that's perfectly fine. I think that is perfectly fine. All right. Easy, good point. Andrew Vaughn performed when he left. Yep. And again, I'm not saying that Luis Robert Jr. is going to be good, but you know what? Right now, he's a Tyrone Taylor. He's a guy that's great defensively. And right now, with the numbers that we've seen over the last 2 seasons, is not a very good bat. But here's what we also know. When there was all those rumors at the trade deadline that Robert Jr. was going to get traded, and he didn't, if you look at that month of July, when everybody thought he was going to get traded, his numbers went up. He looked like a better player. And if you look at his second half numbers, they were much better than his first half numbers. So the potential is there. And I truly believe this, and I think this is not for everybody, but I do think some players need a change of scenery. And I think Luis Robert Jr. is that guy. Can I be completely wrong? Absolutely. And I'll be the first person to call myself out. But if anybody thinks this is a bad deal, you're nuts. Luis Acuna was very expendable, especially with the infielders we still have on this team. Right now, Mauricio and Vientos are your backup infielders. There's no problem with that. What's wrong with that? In all honesty, Acuna would have probably been in the minors because Mauricio has better potential. He's considered a five-tool player. Acuna is not. I don't care. He hits garbage pitching in the Venezuelan Winter League. I'm sorry. I don't care about that. All right, I don't care about that. And exactly, easy. And it's worth the flyer, especially for a guy that was expendable in Luis Acuna. Again, for the people who don't like this deal and are fans of Luis Acuna, the same people who are fans of Luis Acuna were probably fans of Ronnie Mauricio. Ronnie Mauricio was coming into a second year post injury. This guy was supposed to be our everyday third baseman before he got hurt in the Dominican Winter League. All right, he's going to be what Acuna was, except the difference is that he has a better bat coming off the bench with potential power. So right now, at this current moment on January 21st, the New York Mets have Vientos and Mauricio as their bench players. Maybe if something works out, if the Mets don't get Bellinger and Polanco is the first baseman, you can platoon Vientos and Polanco at first base. Mauricio could be a DH as well. There's a lot you can actually have. Well, Dolo, I don't think they need a power hitter because I think the way they're setting this up is that they're lengthening this lineup. And by the way, guys, if you look at Luis Robert Jr.'s stats, so he had 14 home runs last year. He played in 110 games, okay? The last time he played 145 games, he had 38 home runs, all right? So he's 27 years old. And we also got to remember, too, I believe that I still believe that Luis Robert Jr. lost the love of baseball, to be quite honest with you. Again, it's very hard to play for the White Sox, and the way the managers treated certain players. I mean, he had Tony La Russa. He had, I forgot the other manager, but he was another bum. And I just didn't feel like that organization knew what the hell they were doing. They were terrible. The management, everything was terrible. So, and Greg, I don't care if the Mets are quite Hispanic. Who cares? All right. If you care about that, that's on you, not on anybody else. All right. They just got Bo Bichette, who is white as white. All right. So I don't know what you're talking about. Okay. Who cares if they're very Hispanic? I mean, have you not paid attention? A lot of the best players are Hispanic. They're the better ball players. Right. You want to talk about the NBA? Like, it is what it is. Who cares? I don't care. If you care. Sorry, my work alarm is going off. Yeah, okay, he's great. Okay, Bichette's half Brazilian. Great, wonderful. Wonderful. But who cares? If you care about that, then you shouldn't be. There's something else you have to worry about, not baseball. Like, let's be honest about that. Greg, it might be their approach, but who cares? If the Mets win a World Series, are you going to say, oh, they're 95% Hispanic? Who cares? I'm sorry. Bring that shit to another channel. All right? I don't want to hear that nonsense because I don't care. It doesn't bother me. I've played in high school and college with 95% being Hispanic and 2% white, and I was one of them. Who cares? Those are my brothers. I love those guys that I played with. Is what it is. Like if that's on your mind, you got other problems to deal with other than baseball. Greg, I'm not missing a point. I don't care if you have to worry about that. There's something else you can observe, but clearly you're on the ethnic train and worrying about that. Who cares? It might be a pattern of recognition, but who cares? What is the big deal? Like, it's not a big deal. It really isn't. But I'm not even going to. It's interesting to you. It's not interesting to anybody else, or at least me. All right. I'm not going to speak for anybody else, but I don't care about that. Well, it shouldn't be a big deal. But the fact of the matter is, Luis Robert Jr., with the potential of being a 20 plus home run guy, he had better numbers in the second half, which is always a good sign. And even before, right, a couple of weeks before the trade deadline, he believed he was getting moved. And all of a sudden, this guy started to play well, started to make tremendous catches, started to show some power. And everybody's like, oh, okay. Well, I think he needs to change the scenery. He's going to be in a better lineup with Lindor, Soto, Bichette, possibly Bellinger. And I said this again, guys, for everybody who was just tuning in. Thank you for tuning into the breaking news here as the Mets trade for Luis Robert Jr. This does not take them out of Cody Bellinger, in my opinion, because I think they have a different plan for Cody Bellinger. And I forgot who said it in the chat. I apologize, but that person's right. Why, if they get Cody Bellinger, he can be a first base, left field platoon. Absolutely, he can. 100% he can. You know, late in games, if Cody Bellinger is playing left field and Polanco's playing first base, hey, you know what you do? You put Bellinger to first base for defensive purposes later in the game, and you put Tyrone Taylor in left field, or put Luis Robert in left field, or whatever, and now your outfield defense gets better, your first base defense gets better, and it works out that way as well. So that is a strong possibility. And this could mean that they might have found out that Bellinger is not choosing them. Strong possibility. We don't know that yet, right? I haven't looked at my phone. I don't think anything has happened yet. All right, hold on. Give me 1 second. I see John Heyman saying, hold on. All right, so this is John Heyman. This was earlier in the day, or yesterday. We're talking about Austin Hayes. So what we also have to look at as well is that if you were going to sign Austin Hayes, but you were able to get Luis Robert Jr., who would you rather have, Hayes or Robert Jr.? I think most people would pick Robert Jr., right? And Heyman earlier today said Cody Bellinger remains the top target for both New York teams. So I still think it's still a strong possibility. But what the Mets do here is that they protect themselves, right? They get an outfielder. And because if they lose out on Bellinger, I mean, Hayes can still be a possibility. Like I said, they can sign Hayes if they lose out on Bellinger. And you'll have Robert Jr. in center, Hayes in left, and then we'll be okay. And Greg, I think the only way the Yankees get Bellinger is if they go through a sixth year. That's the only way I think they can get Bellinger. And I don't know if they're going to do that. Because, again, if Bellinger is not getting no long-term deals except from the Yankees, I think this is a Kyle Tucker situation all over again. I just think that he's pissed off at the Yankees. He thinks he deserves more from the Yankees. And the Yankees, in his opinion, are not showing him enough respect, which I don't agree with. I think the Yankees offer is very fair. I always thought Bellinger was going to get a 5-year deal from somebody. So I think the Yankees offer is very fair. I think it's a good offer. But with the Yankees, with the Trent Grisham signing that, opting into his qualifying offer, I think that messed up the Yankees' payroll flexibility. I don't think they're going over the biggest luxury tax. I don't think Hal wants to do that. So it's a problem for the Yankees. And there's a reason why the Yankees haven't spent any money at all. I mean, Blackburn, Rosario, they traded for Weathers. That's all they did. So Bellinger puts them just under the precipice of that highest tax. And I don't think they're going to budge. And again, you can, if you're a Yankee fan, if you agree to disagree, it is what it is. But what happened to the Mets multiple times over the last couple of seasons by losing out by a few $1 million and losing out on players, I think is going to be what happens with Cody Bellinger. Even if it's not with the Mets, I think Bellinger is going to take a short-term deal. And whoever gives him that short-term high AAV deal with that first year opt out is going to have Cody Bellinger. And we know the Mets have an offer on the table. We know multiple teams other than the Mets and the Yankees have offers, which I all believe is probably one of the teams not named the Mets probably have a similar deal than the Yankees. But I think he's going to take a short-term deal. Because if he hasn't signed that long-term deal yet, he has to be thinking about that opt-out after next year, after 2026, and taking a short-term deal. So, well, easy. I don't know if they're going to trade for Duran or Kwan anymore for left field, because I don't think that actually makes sense at this point, to be quite honest with you. Because you're going to be trading for more prospects for Kwan or Duran to play left field. And look, I'd be on board with that. Again, give me professional ball players, proven ball players at positions. I'm always on board with that. Not against playing prospects, but if you're trying to win, you don't sign Bo Bichette. You're not in on Peralta and in on Valdez or possibly in on Skubal and telling me that you're going to play a young kid that's not proven. Like, you're looking for a disaster to happen. But again, and I'm going to say this over and over again, this does not take the Mets out of Cody Bellinger. John Heyman confirmed it. The Mets are still very much in on Cody Bellinger. Luis Robert Jr. is a good addition. But by just pure defense, it's a good addition. Because there is a potential of the power to arrive. And I'm telling you this right now. Look at the Mets lineup and look at the White Sox lineup. This guy had nobody in that lineup. Nobody for the past 2 seasons. Put in him, and I think this could be a good idea. Maybe would you bat him second between Lindor and Soto? Put Lindor lead off, Soto third, Robert second, Bo Bichette cleaning up, possibility, or depending on who you want, fourth. But here's what we're looking at right here, guys. I think Luis Robert Jr. needs to be at the top of the lineup, in my opinion. I think that's a good idea. But right now, you got Lindor, Robert Jr., Soto, Bichette, Polanco, Simeon. That's 6 guys. How many times have I said this, guys? The Mets have been, and me and Chris been talking about this for a while. This Mets team offense has been so top-heavy that 5 through 9 has been an outright disaster for years. It's been a problem. You're already talking about 6 guys that are 20 home run guys at the minimum through 1 through 6. And you're not talking about Beatty. You're not talking about Alvarez. And you're not talking about whoever might DH in Vientos or whoever. And if the Mets get Bellinger, you're talking about 1 through 7 of a solid lineup. A solid lineup. And that doesn't even include the DH yet. And Alvarez. Let's say it's Vientos and Alvarez. And my alarm's going off as you hear my alarm. My alarms are set in 10-minute intervals, so I wake my ass up to go to work because I got to go to work in about an hour and a half. So this is why I love it, because you're spreading out the lineup where the Mets never had that for a long time. I mean, we're talking about 1 through 6 right now without making any more moves. Like right now, Carson Bench is in left field. Let's say Vientos is the DH and Polanco is the first baseman. Let's just say that. CD, if they get Bellinger, would I write Stearns an apology? No, I would be. Haven't I always been fair? I've always said, if David Stearns, and I said this all offseason, if David Stearns, even if I don't agree with moves, that doesn't mean I'm not going to give him credit, right? If he gets Cody Bellinger, I give him all the credit in the world. I gave him credit for Bo Bichette for pivoting very aggressively and quickly. I'm not against giving him credit, but he has to do it to gain that credit and gain that respect. Let's not act like he's done a great job because he has not. Now, I love the Bo Bichette signing because it was a quick pivot to get that bat in the lineup. Getting Luis Robert Jr., I wanted Luis Robert Jr. for 2 years now. I said that for a while. I think he would have helped us at the deadline. It would have been better than freaking Mullins. But I think the deal got hacked because I didn't think Stearns wanted to give up Vientos. And now he didn't have to. So he didn't budge on that. And I truly believe he was willing to give Acuna up for a while. And maybe Truman Pauly was the extra addition. I don't know. I don't know the White Sox intention. I don't care about the White Sox intention. I know you're getting a guy for only 2 years ago. For everybody who tells us that David Stearns is a genius, right? Nobody bitched about Mania. Nobody bitched about Severino. Nobody bitched about other guys that hasn't been good in years. And bring them in and have good seasons. And then they say, oh, look what he did. So why don't you say the same thing for Luis Robert Jr.? Keep the same pattern. Raymond, hey, the trumpets were fun. The trumpets were fun. And yes, Mets fan, I agree. We do need starting pitching. So, he's doing everything with the lineup, a little bit with the bullpen, and we do need pitching. But look, what this shows me right now with David Stearns is that he's willing to do the necessary trades of prospects. I know Luis Acuna is only one prospect, but according to a lot of Met fans, he was important. So Luis Acuna, I think, was expendable. I said that for a while. And Dolo, Stearns probably won't sign Roberts, but you know what? I don't care about 2027. Here's what I care about. Let Luis Robert Jr. go buck wild in his contract year. Great. You want to hit 30 home runs for us and bat 250 with 80 RBIs? Great. Go do it. I can care less about 2027 right now. Because, again, depending on what the Mets do pitching-wise, if Carson Bench is untouchable, which he probably is, but let's say he's going to be in this organization, you give him at least an extra year to develop, which I think is important. Throwing these guys in when they're not ready is stupid. And the Mets did that last year with Jonah Tong specifically and somewhat Brandon Sproat. And I think they also did that early with Beatty. I think they did it with Acuna. And I also think Mauricio didn't really have that chance because he got hurt. But I really think what people are missing here is what the lineup looks like right now. Before Bellinger, before any other move. There is potential for 1 through 6 to be 20 plus home runs. And again, you can write down Lindor 28 to 30 home runs. You know Soto's going to hit 30 home runs at least. So your biggest guys in the lineup are going to hit close to 60 home runs combined, maybe more. And now you bring in Bichette, who's a 20 home run guy. You got Simeon, who's an 18 to 20 home run guy. You got Polanco, who's a 20 home run guy. Luis Robert Jr., make no mistake about it, I think he can easily hit 20 home runs. Like, just 1 through 6 alone can hit you easily 20 home runs. And you know what this does? And we talked about Simeon and Polanco and Bichette, clutch players. Guys that hit with runners in scoring position. The Mets have missed that over the years. You're not even talking about Lindor's clutch numbers, Soto's clutch numbers. I know Soto, with his clutch numbers last year, wasn't great, but his entire career was known for that. Lindor, we've seen it time and time again, carrying his team in 24, doing what he had to do in the playoffs. He's a clutch performer. So you're talking about 20-plus home run guys at a minimum through 1 through 6. That's not counting if Beatty's going to be playing somewhere. But let's just say DH, you got Vientos. Obviously, he can close his eyes and hit 20 home runs. Even in a bad season, he had 18. Francisco Alvarez, just a little bit better of a bounce-back season than last year. He can hit 18 home runs. He hit what? 10? And being hurt most of the year? So he can easily be a 20 home run guy. So you're talking about guys that have power, not tremendous power or big power everywhere, but got like look at Bo Bichette's numbers. He had 18 home runs this year, but he had 90 RBIs. What does that tell you? He puts the bat on the ball with runners on base, with runners in scoring position. That's great. Well, Gio, why would Soto be unhappy with Bellinger? He wasn't with the Yankees when he had together. I mean, Luis Robert Jr., with talking about, Hispanic players, isn't he appeasing Juan Soto? I don't know. I don't care about that. I believe Luis Robert Jr. is Cuban, I think maybe Dominican, but I think he's Cuban. I could be wrong about that, but still, right? I don't know a relationship, but again, you want to get Luis Robert Jr. under somebody's wing, and if that happens to be Juan Soto with the Latin American connection, who cares, man? If he's Cuban, right? I thought he was Cuban, but if you get that the Hispanic connection with Juan Soto, isn't that good? Isn't that good? Hell yeah, it is. I absolutely believe it's good. I truly believe that 100%. So, all right, guys. And Charlie, I 100% agree. And I love this comment because I've said this for a couple of years now. No matter what you feel about Pete Alonso or Brandon Nimmo or Jeff McNeil, the issue that I always felt was that you kept on running the back year after year after year. Continuing to lose, continuing to choke divisions away, embarrass yourselves in the postseason in 2022. With the main guys here, and again, I will link Lindor in there, but with Lindor's contract, it's very hard to move. And I don't think he's declined enough to say that he's worth moving because he's still a very good to excellent player. Brandon Nimmo was clearly declining, and everybody saw it. And again, don't give me his freaking numbers because we all know about Brandon Nimmo's numbers. They're inflated to the umph degree. We all know that. Every one of us know that. Look at his numbers throughout the months. He had probably had 2 red hot, maybe even 2.5 red hot months, and the rest was average or below average. And it made his numbers look great because of those 2 red hot months. I used to say that about Pete Alonso. Now, last year, different story with Pete Alonso. He had an all-around good season. So there's nothing to say bad about that. But most of his career, he's had those inflated months. With that, the core continued to lose. And for everybody who wants to give credit to Pete Alonso and Brandon Nimmo, they were part of those collapses. They were a part of those losing seasons. Don't say that they were the faces or the captains of this franchise. And then when things go bad, you blame everybody else except for them. When you're the faces of the franchise, you better get blamed when things don't go right. And they never did. Certain few, myself, and a couple of others. You got to blame other guys. You got to blame the main guys who basically were the faces of this team. Everybody blamed everybody else. It's everybody else's fault but theirs. I don't care about your emotional attachment to these players. They were part of the problem. You can't keep on losing and running it back with the same core. Now, I am not telling you that changing this core and making this team what it is today is going to be better. But the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again. The Mets were doing that over and over and over again. And even with the addition of Juan Soto, the core still failed. And you know what? It was time for change. These guys have been here 6, 7, 8 years. We did not win. We had 2 playoff appearances with them. 2 in 8 years of them being part of the team, this core. 2. If that's successful in your eyes, you need your goddamn eyes examined. So guess what, guys? The New York Mets, Truman sounds like a made-up name. And you know what? Maybe he got the deal done. So Truman, I don't think we're out on Bellinger. I still think, and guys, if you were watching Hot Stove yesterday with myself and Chris, what did I say? I think the Mets are going to sign Cody Bellinger and put him at first base. It makes too much sense not to put him there, especially now. And there's no point for the Mets to pull their offer for Bellinger. You go get Bellinger, you put him at first base. Now Carson Benz has every opportunity to win the left field job. If not, Tyrone Taylor can play left field. Not the end of the world. Now you really solidify your outfield defense in center and left, right? That can be a strong possibility. I said this for a while. I don't believe Stearns wants Polanco to play first base. Maybe occasionally, but not every day. It makes no sense. And I think David Stearns knows that. And again, there was no indication, and nobody said it. Again, if anybody's seen any report that the Mets are now out on Cody Bellinger, please let me know and I'll shut my mouth. Nobody said that. Nobody said that yet. And the Mets shouldn't pull their offer for whatever they offered Cody Bellinger. Because if you watch my video earlier today, Cody Bellinger got all these offers, and now he's mulling over the offers from the teams. So we'll see. Again, tomorrow I'm going to do a Cody Bellinger watch show because I think it's going to happen tomorrow. Now, hopefully I'm not at work and it happens because that would suck. You know, you'd be seeing me at work trying to do a live stream, and that's probably not going to be a good thing. Trust me. I did it once at work, but that was when I was in New York. In this new place I'm at, it's like, it's iffy. But if it happens, I'll go live. Even if Bellinger doesn't sign with the Mets, I'm going to go live. But I am going to do a watch. If Bellinger doesn't sign by the time I get off work, I'm going to put on a Bellinger wash show like we did with Kyle Tucker. Right? It was fun. It was a lot to talk about. And day 2 of the Kyle Tucker watch show, I ended the show around I did like a 2.5 hour show of the watch, and we got more information in regards to what the Mets offered. And I shut it down. And then 6 hours later at 11 o'clock at night, he signed with the Dodgers. So I think it still makes a lot of sense, even with the addition of Luis Robert Jr. to get Cody Bellinger. Because why, guys? Why did Cody Bellinger makes much sense? Because the Mets can still do other moves and still use Bellinger in any way they see fit. That's why Luis Robert Jr. doesn't take him out with Bellinger. That's why Bo Bichette doesn't take him out of Bellinger. Why? Because Cody Bellinger can play so many positions that the Mets can still make moves and still land Cody Bellinger and say, hey, I can put you here. We might not need you in center field anymore, but I can put you at first. I can put you in left. So the holes that the Mets still have, Bellinger can still fit. Why? He is a tremendous fit still. And I said this for a couple of months now. Bellinger doesn't stop the Mets from doing anything because you can still have whatever move you want, position player-wise, especially in the outfield and first base, and still require Bellinger to play somewhere else. It's great. This is why this move makes so much sense with Luis Robert Jr. So, guys, once again, as I get ready for work, the New York Mets make a late night trade because David Stearns never makes an early day trade. It's always late at night, this damn guy. But tremendous amount of credit to David Stearns by bringing in a great defensive player who has the potential to have a bounce back season offensively in a contract year. I think him being a part of this lineup is going to help him out tremendously. I think this kid needs a change of scenery. And by no means am I saying he's going to be the player he was in 2023. I'm not saying that. But it's there. And for everybody who used to come at me and argue, well, when David Stearns brought in this guy and he performed, you didn't give him credit. Well, the same people who talked about that should be saying the same thing about Luis Robert Jr. The potential is there. There's no risk. Like, the money's money. The Mets clearly don't care about the AAV with these players. They just don't care. They care about the long-term ramifications. Luis Robert Jr. has no long-term ramifications with the New York Mets. It's only 1 year. So Luis Robert Jr. goes to the Mets for Luisano Acuna and Truman Pauly. Thank you for watching the Mets Breaking News right here on the channel and on X. Hit that like button, guys. Subscribe to the channel. And look out for the Cody Bellinger watch show later today. If he does not sign before midday, I'll do a watch show around 2 o'clock or so, give or take 2, 3 o'clock. And we'll do about an hour and a half to 2 hour show, maybe longer. If we're getting news that he might sign at that moment, maybe I'll stay on. We'll see. The watch shows are a tremendous amount of fun, and they're very successful with people watching. So that's always fun. With that said, guys, thank you for tuning in to the breaking news here on the channel. Have a good night, guys. Let's go Mets, and I'll see you next time, guys. Good night.
Meet the Mets, meet the Mets. Step right up and greet the Mets. Bring your kiddies, bring your wife. Guaranteed to have